That's going to kick us off for this episode of Humans Anonymous. Welcome, anybody watching, anybody out there on the internet checking us out or listening to us. Thank you for checking us out or listening to us. My name is Landon Ballard, and today joining me in the studio, we have back Aaron West from Run West Media. I'm Magnet Management. Thank you for coming along today, Aaron. We're excited to be able to have you with us. We've also got good friend of mine, Nick, with me to my left.
How it goes.
And we're going to do a little episode here, a little bit more pointed than we normally do, a little bit less rambling and chit chat. I don't want to cut anybody off, but let's get right to the point. What I want to talk about today is something that I've kind of been thinking about a lot. And as you can see, I've gathered three men here for a reason. This is going to kind of be an episode about men. And so the concept that I've kind of been thinking about lately and that has been rattling around in my mind is the concept of being a man. What is being a man? What do I think being a man is? What, should being a man mean in society? And so I kind of just want to talk to you guys and get to know you a little bit better through kind of discovering a little bit more of what your opinion is on that. And so kind of looking from the beginning, I don't know, maybe Aaron, do you want to start out here? But like, kind of just talk me through growing up, when you were young, watching maybe a father figure in your life or someone that you cared about who was like a authority figure that was a male, something. I guess, how did you view being a man as a child or growing up? And what influenced that versus how did that change as you grow up? Because we learn a lot about, growing up in the growing up process, that's part of growing up is learning. And so kind of what did you learn? What kind of shifted maybe your opinion didn't shift, but kind of what changed, what didn't change? And what's your opinion now? Like, what do you think today in society being a man is? What do you think for you being a man is? Does all of that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. First off, thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to come on here and talk to everybody. I think that's a pretty big question. I'll start with the first part that you had mentioned, and then we can kind of discuss. For me, growing up, like just what's a man? It was my dad. He was somebody that I didn't know anything else besides just this figure here. He's here all the time. When he's not here, he's at work taking care of us. And he had such a routine, and because that I was in the Army, my dad was also in the Army. So we definitely have very similar traits as far as needing to have a structure in our life in order to be successful, to feel like I'm being productive. And I didn't know then that I probably could have used a lot more of that structure when I was a teenager. It was there. It was probably better than some, but for me, looking back, it's like, and I should say we all have our different viewpoints of how we view how things should have turned out. And I think that's also, as a man, we're always constantly kind of thinking like, oh, if I would have made this choice or this decision, things might have been a little bit different, or things might have gone better, or things could have been worse. And so it's hard not to like fall into that constant like thinking about like what could I have done or not done. And for me, it was just something that growing up, seeing my dad, who was kind of rock solid, he was one of those, he woke up at like, I think he still does the same routine, like up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, like kind of.
Holy smokes.
Yeah,
That's early.
Bible study, does like a prayer session, goes for a run, does his workout. So he's getting all this stuff done.
How old is your dad?
He's gonna hit me if I don't remember correctly. No, he won't. He was born in 46, so we're coming up on 80. So he's 78.
Are you telling me he still goes for runs?
It's not as he actually got COVID.
But I mean, exercising every day still?
up until probably like 3 years ago, yeah, it was
Wow.
the same thing, lifting, running 2 miles
Wow.
every day. Then he got COVID and pneumonia and something else all at once, and it kinda, like, knocked
That'll
him
do
out,
it to you, huh?
lost
Yeah,
a
it
bunch
takes
of
a
weight.
toll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he walks every day, still kinda does his own little workout routine. He still has that structure as far as, like, and it's I can
Well,
totally.
let me just interject here.
Yeah, yeah.
I totally am seeing now maybe where you get your work ethic from, because I see, and I've talked about it before on this podcast, but I have seen how hard you work and how dedicated and how just to it you are. You know, everything that you have done that I have been able to watch, it's just very you seem very driven, and I'm seeing a little
Love
bit
that.
maybe where that's coming from.
Absolutely, from both him and my mom. I was very lucky to have amazing parents that kind of obviously we all have things that we wish our parents would have done or not have done, but there's nothing I can sit there and say like, oh man, I had it rough. Like I had a good childhood, which I realize is probably in the minority of a lot of people, that just
Oh, yeah.
the ability to kind of go through stuff, being a mixed kid in a very, I grew up in Minnesota, which was a very white area, and not really dealing with any issues at all. Like I just the amount of things that I feel like I've been so lucky with just puts in perspective of like, man, I've got a lot here that I see so many other people that are dealing with other things that are hard. And granted, I've dealt with my own things in the past as well, but just realizing like having such a good foundation is what, and this we can get into going on later on, but just being that for my son is something that to me being a man is to be able to carry on that tradition of being a great quality father who was there, who supported and was supportive. And so I think all of that kind of goes into just who I am now, but I'll pass the torch over. I don't want to hog everything. I'm a talker, so
Yeah, definitely.
I
Well,
love that.
I will switch it over to Nick here. I know we haven't really got to meet you
Oh yeah.
yet, Nick. So let me ask you a couple questions off the bat, and then
Yeah.
we'll get into it.
Sounds good to me.
So where are you from?
So I grew up in Oak Park, Illinois.
Oak
So
Park.
yeah, so a little
Okay, and can you
suburb.
tell us just real briefly about kind of mom and dad growing up?
Well, mom and dad, it was a pretty good childhood for me. They went pretty strong till around, I'd say 2008. They started fighting. That's around the time they got divorced and everything like that. So
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but those aren't your biological parents, correct?
no. So I was adopted actually. So like at 6 weeks old,
Okay.
they came and they got me, and I'm truly blessed. Honestly, I got adopted by a really good family. They're very loving, although they kind of had their differences and stuff. There was still a lot of love I could feel from them and from my siblings growing up. So, and it wasn't really a problem for me. Like, down the line, I started, to struggle a little bit with like abandonment issues and stuff like that. But like a kid, as long as along the lines of like childhood and stuff, it was pretty normal. It was pretty normal for me.
Gotcha.
But with your question and stuff,
Yeah,
the
so like start
fatherhood,
from the beginning.
yeah,
Obviously, you were adopted, but you were adopted at such a young age. Like you
yeah.
grew up
So
obviously with only one father figure.
yeah, I consider them
and so
real.
what was that like as far as, your perspective on being a man?
So kind of along the lines of Aaron over here, my dad was pretty like set, like he had his like routines and everything like that. He was an early riser. I don't know about 3 a.m. but he would be up around like 5 every day, and he actually has a PhD in sociology. So, and my mom's a teacher as well. So it was a lot of just that teaching mentality. For me, a lot of things that were kind of rooted deep for me was like discipline. They really got on me for like discipline and
As
respect.
teachers, did they give you homework at home?
So they didn't go as far as that, but like when I did get homework and everything, they were very on top of me to get
I
it done.
bet.
Yeah. So it was like when it came to school, it was like very important. So from a young age, I kind of learned that like I got to go to classes, I got to do homework. If I started slacking in any of those areas, it was a quick pull up for me. But yeah, other than that, with fatherhood and everything, like being a man, one of the big things was just like to support the family. I feel like for me, like my dad really like drilled that into my head. It was it was kind of like, be the man, take control, take power and position, and kind of provide for everybody else, was kind of like what it was, like what I seen when I was like growing up. And kind of like when I was a teenager and stuff, I realized like that's really hard. You know what I'm saying? It's not as easy as it sounds. It comes with its own challenges and stuff like that. But yeah, that was like one of the biggest things. And
so as a kid, like, and you'll see, I similar kind of had a view of my father. Did you ever like almost feel like I can't wait to be like a grown up man and just work all the time, and like it's gonna be so fun?
No, I feel like a lot of people can relate with that too. It's just like you're young, you're like, I can't wait to be an adult. I can't wait to be an adult. You get to 18, you're like, I want to be a kid. I want to be a kid. I want to be a kid. It's so much responsibility. But when I got there, I don't think I was ready at first, to kind of be that grown. Like there was a lot of stuff that comes with being a man that I feel like I wasn't ready for. My dad did it and made it sound so easy. It was through watching him. I'm just
Gotcha.
I'm sitting right next to the router too.
Right, is right there. Love it. But yeah, man, it was cool, man. It was interesting to grow up and kind of see everything, because you wanted to talk a little bit about just like the view from being an adult, right?
Like, yeah, like how, what do you like you how's that changed now? What do you think now?
Yeah, I mean, now, man, it's a lot of respect out to dad, like for me right now, and kind of like this point that I'm in my life, I'm kind of starting to like hold my own weight, starting to kind of bring some of them attributes that I seen growing up and kind of move it into my life, so I see like, it was kind of more of that like late teen, early 20 phase. And for you guys, I don't know, I'm 24, but so it was from that, that late teen to like 22, where it was kind of just, responsibilities weren't on the top of my, like priorities were on the top of my list. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Another like really big thing, and then I'll be done. I'll pass it off to you. Was growing up in my house, it was like men don't cry. You know what I'm saying? It was like to have this like this almost this silicone heart, and like, no one can break it. You know what I'm saying? And it was like to kind of like shove down the emotions and just be the face of the family, when times got tough. And I don't know, just like being an adult with that now, it's kind of like, emotions are really good. People need to know where you're at. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that was definitely like one of like the huge things I learned. Like I don't have to stuff down my feelings at all in any situation. It should be, an open book, an open heart. That's like one of the really big things that I felt was shown as a kid, but as I matured and got older, I kind of made my own choice with that one.
Yeah, but understood it a little bit better.
Go ahead and pass this one off to you, man.
Yeah, well, and I think that, I mean, there's not a whole lot different that I would probably add to that. I just think that it is fascinating that we take all of these things about our father figures, male authorities, whatever, and now I'm guessing there was a lot of things growing up that your fathers did that were just blatantly negative. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure that there were situations you saw, things that you witnessed where you were like, my dad probably shouldn't have done that, or shouldn't have said that, or probably whatever. And it's funny how, at least I do, and I guess I can't say that. I don't know every father, but I would venture to say that most people have that experience of seeing something that their father does that's not right, that's not good. And it's funny how we tend to block all of those things out when we think of being a man, and we only view the things that we see our fathers or these authority figures or whoever it is doing that positively influences things. And so we run this filter through our head. And so, like, for me growing up, all I saw was the work. You know, my dad was in the Navy as well. And so I just saw him leaving to go to work all the time and coming home late, tired. And so very early on, there was that just perception of that's just what being a man is just working and just taking care of having food on the table,
like providing.
and that's
Love
it,
that.
you know? And yeah, I mean, as time goes on, you know, like you were talking about, you learn that it's not so much about just that, you know, it's there's so much more. And being a father, Aaron, I'm sure that you can relate. It's made me realize how important it is to continually show my kid how much I love them. Because if there's one thing that I wish that I have more memories of, it's my dad coming home and telling me he loved me. But I didn't think that that was supposed to happen. My perception was that when he was feeling good, when it was a good day, when he was on vacation, when it was the weekend, whatever, that was when we had that connection. And when he was doing what he had to do for the family, that's what he had to do as a man. And that's just who he was. And so I never realized that I was missing, you know, a big chunk. And, you know, as a father now, I realize I have to give that to my kid. Otherwise, they're going to end up feeling the same exact way about it. And so I guess more recently, I guess that's why I've been thinking about it. And so I would say that's kind of how my perception has changed. Like, I always thought that it was about being tough, not crying, you know, making sure that everybody knows where you stand on things and standing very firmly on them. But as I've grown up, I've adopted this new theory of, you know, I think that love is ultimately the only thing that's keeping the whole world spinning around. And as cheesy as that sounds,
100%.
as corny as that sounds, I think that that's, you know, the most important thing as a man is to love relentlessly, no matter what. And so that's something that I've kind of just been thinking about a lot. And like I said, being a new dad, having two little kids obviously doesn't hurt that. Definitely helps in that situation. But yeah, I guess that's just something that's kind of been rattling around, and I figured I'd bring it to the group. And I think it's interesting to hear that we've all kind of had similar kind of perceptions. I did want to ask Aaron, I know that your dad was in the military as well, right? Do you feel like as a kid, you felt like he was gone most of the time? Like, how was that for you as a kid growing up with a dad in the military? Like, did he manage his time at home well? Did you see him a lot? How was that? Because I know they only have so much time, you know?
Yeah. Technically, him being in the Army was well before he even met my mom. So he's born in 46. He served in Vietnam, or not Vietnam, in Germany. He was like one of two guys to not go to Vietnam out of like 800 that were in his platoon or battalion. But he was working a lot. He worked full time. He worked a second job where he was like the general manager at a health club. So my dad was relentless. It was just something that I just saw. So to me, like, but it's funny because for me, I don't feel like I ever saw him do anything wrong. Whether that's selfish of me to say, almost, it's like, sure, there was, I'm sure looking back, like politically incorrect things might have been done in the 80s, like whether it's spanking was allowed back then. So to me, but like looking back, like I feel like any spanking out was deserved. So there wasn't like this, like I'm being abused. Like, I can't believe he's doing this to me. So to me, like just that kind of stuff is, but as far as him stepping out and it's
okay. So I want to dig into this then. I want to learn something here. Tell me something, because I mean, it's not very often that you get to meet somebody that feels that confidently, strongly positive about, you know, their parent. Like, I would definitely love to hear a little bit more about Pops, man.
Yeah, we've definitely had our differences, like on our beliefs of religion, which was kind of our riff, because like Christianity and just faith was such a core part of growing up, like the church and going to all those things. So him, it was like he put my mom on a pedestal, like he was the breadwinner and like would bring in the money, but he always like deferred to her because it's like she took care of me. And that's kind of the same way I've always felt. It's like, and as a dad, you realize like your wife and your woman, like they gave up their body to have this human being that's in love with me, that seemingly like it's the funny thing too, or not funny, but it's like being a parent, being a dad is like the greatest thing in the world. But when you look at it from a dad's point of view and look at the mom, it's hard to realize like the mother and this baby had this connection that we didn't have for 9 months, that they could like feel each other. And then all of a sudden, like this baby's taken away. So there's like a separation anxiety, or not anxiety, but just like this separation from this thing that loved me unconditionally, didn't scream at me, didn't cry at me, didn't throw things at me. So it's definitely a much different idea as far as being a dad, because it's like we just got this present, we just got this brand new cool gift that now can like looks like us, wants to play with us. And so it's, to me, like being a dad and realizing, okay, the mom's going through that, but and I realize now, like after, like you said, after being a dad, like the things that my parents did like was because of everything that they might have gone through. And you realize growing up, you think your parents know everything, aren't like are the superiors, like how are they managing getting through this whole world, like it's amazing. And then all of a sudden you realize like you're an adult and you're like, man, this is hard, like how do I get from point A to point B? And I sit there and think like, how did my parents like not have me sick all the time by not being able to go and check on, like let me go and check up and look up on Google, like what is runny nose plus this, like what are these things? And it's like they didn't have that, but they managed to figure it out. So it's like you have to give them props for everything that they did, because as our last talk, it's like we had maps, like the internet wasn't, or there was no
there's no
email like until I was 12. So like it's and that's the thing, like being an old head for me, it's like you guys are still in my head like so young. I'm 41, about to turn 42 in July, and to me it's like sometimes I don't think I became a man until I was like 38. Like it's weird. Like there's so many different phases along the way that you're like, I'm not just this like waste of a space or whatever it might be. Like as soon as you like leave the house and you're kind of on your own, there's that like, what do I do now? Like, how do I do anything? And I think that from being a boy to like a self-sustained person. So there's definitely these different steps as you go to try to figure out like, how do I get through all of this? Cause it is so much. It's how do you find a place to stay? Like, I didn't know that. I think that might be the biggest knock on my parents, is that there was less preparation as far as leases and like car loans and different things that like I didn't know about. But I think in general, there's so many parents that one don't know themselves, so they can't explain it to somebody if they don't know like what all this stuff is. And so that's kind of comes with the territory. But I think that's my own plug here. Is where like I started a business. It's like I had no idea how to do it before, but I think being a man, you decide like, I'm going to try something. I'm going to take a risk. Let me jump ahead and see if this is going to work. And if it doesn't, like, hopefully it's a cool story that people will say if I fell off this cliff and like, I'll be remembered for legend status, or something that's going to work and that'll be cool. And so hopefully it can help people. So it's being a man. It's so treacherous in some ways of trying to, how am I going to ask a girl out and get slapped? But I think that's kind of what hardens us of different, we have to keep trying. Like that's just what's what a man has to do. You can't give up. And I think there's men who do, and we hide it so well. I think that, I don't know if that was something you mentioned before, of trying to put on this persona, like, be tough, don't cry. I was unfortunate. I think that this might be the other side of it. It's like, I was forced to show my emotions. I couldn't stop if all of a sudden I'm going to start crying. Like, it's just, and I didn't like it for a while. And it's like, you can call me weak or whatever, but it's like, okay, I cried because of A, B, or C. It's like, and you wouldn't cry in this situation. Like, then I understand who you are, kind of deal. So
yeah,
it to me, like, it never affected me along the way. And I realize there's more of a sense of it being okay. And so it's tricky to kind of have that conversation with my son. It's like, okay, what's the reason for the crying? If it's just, are we just going to cry because we didn't get our way, or are we going to cry because we hurt? And it's like, it's okay to cry if you're hurt, but it's not okay to cry if you're just trying to get something. And I think that kind of goes with anything. And I'll yield my time.
No, so real quick, if you guys got one, I would love to go around one more time and just like tell me one thing. Maybe it's something that you are just maybe have been thinking about as we've been talking about it, but what's one lesson, one thing that your father taught you that you still kind of carry around with you today? And I was going to say, I can get started if you guys want. I would say that the biggest lesson would just be to take care of each other. I came from a really close-knit family. There's 8 of us, and we were constantly moving. And so we didn't really have anybody but each other. And so the biggest thing that he taught us is to look after one another. And, you know, we have done that through and through. And if my sister who lives in Chicago called me tonight and told me she needed me, I'd be making a road trip. And so I think that that's probably one of the most important things, is looking out for your family, at least in my opinion. And that's a big lesson that he's taught me.
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I guess for me, like I was kind of saying earlier, one of the biggest lessons he's kind of taught me, which I'm, even still learning today, is kind of discipline. Is like one of the biggest things that he had. It was like keep pushing and keep doing what you got to do, and also patience. He was really big on patience and taking things just one day at a time. That was like one of his biggest lessons for me. Yeah,
that's good.
No, I love the patience one. It's one I try to take on every day. It's
difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to be positive about like a singular day, but it's like, you got to build them up. It's what we talked about before, the compounding interest, as far as knowing that you're doing something in the right direction.
Oh, yeah.
For me, the lesson that I kind of have always taken away from my dad, and whether it's because he was a black man growing up in a fairly white society, but like I said, we've really didn't have any issues, but I think it's because of the way, and it's fun, and I'm getting messages from Ray. The things that I kind of go back to and kind of think about was just to act the right way when no one's watching. Because at least with us being in a very faith-based community, it's like there is somebody always watching. So no matter what, and I think
Amen,
whether you believe in a higher power, but it's also yourself. It's something that you remember if you did something wrong. And so I think having to have the least amount of guilt on your mind, the better. And so whether it's then, if you do something and it's then trying to lie around it, and then lies, you have to lie more in order to get that lie to continue on. So, and obviously you guys,
man, that's the best, right?
So, but it's getting, and obviously you guys are in your 20s, I'm in my 40s. I realized within the last few years, I just got so tired of trying to entangle the lie or untangle it. And it was just like, I'm just going to tell the truth, whether you're mad at me about it or not. It's off my chest. Like, I told you the truth. I'm done. I don't have to think about it anymore. And so that's what I mean, like, kind of, and those were lessons I learned in late 30s. And it's like, that to me is like kind of becoming, I mean, like owning everything that I'm doing, no matter who's watching, and knowing that it's fitting to my conscience and knowing that I'm trying to do good. If I do something bad, and even like my son, if I'm working hard and he's home because he's sick or something, and I like, hold on, I'm trying to work on something, and it's realizing in that moment that yes, he's bugging me, but he doesn't know that. And I think being the father that can like stop in the middle of it and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not mad at you, I'm just trying to do this, sorry for being like that, and him knowing that it's not because he came in and did it. And so for me, I want to make sure that he knows that he's not a negative influence on me anyway, because I never had that. I think that's, like I said, it's I was lucky to be in how I was raised and environment, the city, just, and the experiences that I had were so positive that hopefully can keep putting it out there and try. And obviously I really, like I said, I know I'm in the minority, and there's so many people who have harder times and don't have fathers around.
Yeah.
And it's hopefully you guys can be more, not a role model, but just like can speak on it and hopefully kind of share the things that might be missing. I think that's like, there's the guy on TikTok, the dad that like shows people how to iron and how to bait a hook. It's all like the man stuff that you wouldn't have gotten if you were missing a dad. So it's like, hopefully we can kind of all kind of help in that process for somebody who wants to give up, and hope that's like, hey, we're here. We've dealt with some stuff. Yes, I'm sugarcoating a lot of it right now, but it's like as a whole, it's like I have that positive perception of like things are going to be okay. I got to keep moving forward. Like you said, it's one day at a time. I just want to kind of move forward and be ready for tomorrow.
Well, and I love that you ended it kind of on that too, because that's what our organization here, what Moi is all about. It's taking what we have gone through, what we've experienced, the things that we know now, and trying to pass that on, trying to help the next person, trying to make the next person's life just a little bit easier or a little bit better because they didn't have to go through maybe that little thing that we did. So yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. So I appreciate you guys so much coming and talking to me about this. Like I said, it's been on my mind a lot lately, so it was cool to be able to kind of shoot the breeze with you guys and talk about what it was like growing up as boys and becoming men.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course. Till next time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.